So how much bigger is this issue going to get?
Criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who was captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been
As all of you have been, the confusing last few weeks, the Taliban takeover in Afghanistan. Those weren't his exact words, but these are his words. What I mean to say is, these are the words written and they're for him on the government website. They are his words.
Okay, so the topic of Tim Walz's stolen valor is obviously still getting kicked around. And of course, I've even done a couple of videos on this, but I figured I would do one more video to kind of like just put a cherry on top of things, give you guys my thoughts. Now, real quick, I want to go ahead and say this. This video right here from Angry Cops is going to be in the description box. Angry Cops, I think, is Army, so therefore he probably understands how the Army does things a lot better than I would. I'm prior service Marine, and while it is, I do have obviously knowledge of like how their rank structure works, stuff like that. I was never actually in the Army. The closest I ever got to being around Army guys was when I was stationed at Fort Knox, Kentucky for tank school. But of course, this is back in 2004 when the USA Armor Center was at Fort Knox, Kentucky, and I got to see U.S. Army basic training. Outside of that I didn't actually see exactly what they do on a daily basis as far as, just basic normal activities. I'm pretty sure it's not that different from what I did in the Marines, but still at the same time, though, there's obviously going to be differences in each branch. Still, though, the video from Angry Cops explaining that aspect, he goes in much more detail, will be in the description box of this video here. This video right here is going to be more about why it is that you should not lie about your military service, while at the same time also looking at what's come out since, because guess what? This situation is getting a lot worse. However, there is one thing that's been getting kicked around recently, and it's, let's go ahead and dive into this because there's obviously a lot to discuss. Now, before I get started, the two main things that we're going to be going off of is this letter that apparently Walz wrote that came out here recently where he claimed that he was at Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan. Kind of hard for him to do that, seeing how it is he never actually went overseas and to Afghanistan or Iraq, either one of the two. Also, there's something else, too, that was brought up during JD Vance's interview that he did this past weekend. And, of course, these people are trying to turn it around on former President Trump apparently getting a draft deferment. And, of course, I'm going to be talking a little bit about that. So a lot to cover. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive in. I want to start with the Vance side of things because, obviously, he had an interview with Dana Bash this past week. And he also had an interview with the woman from CBS News and also the dude from ABC News, John Carl. And, of course, Vance basically backhanded him the entire interviews. The guy was actually damn near perfect, almost flawless. I mean, it's actually smart how Trump has decided to deploy him to each single Kamala Harris event to counter everything she says. And then also to go on top of that, he handles the media very well. I talk about this in the video that I posted at 2 o'clock today, where Vance, in a lot of ways, is getting set up for a presidential run in 2028. If you actually think about it, he's already got a leg up because he's been in front of the media a lot the past 2 years. Just simply saying, he's kind of used to it. But this interview that he did with Dana Bash, the topic of Tim Walz's stolen valor did in fact come up, and of course it led to a nice exchange, and here's a piece of it.
Criticized his lying about his own record, okay? This is a guy who was captured on video saying, I carried a gun in war. He never went to war. This is a guy who's been captured on video. As other people say, he's an Afghanistan veteran. He's a veteran of a war, nodding along in agreement instead of saying, no, I did serve my country and I did it honorably, but I never went to a war zone. I'm not criticizing Tim Walz's service. I'm criticizing the fact that he lied about his service for political gain, Dana. You now asked me three questions.
I want to go ahead and say this. Nobody is attacking the fact that Tim Walz is a veteran. Nobody's attacking the fact that he served. They're attacking the fact that he lied about his rank. They're attacking him because he lied about saying he went to Iraq or Afghanistan. They're attacking him because he's lying about saying I carried weapons of war into combat when obviously he didn't do that. Nobody's attacking his military service. I know that there are guys who did time in the military that never got to see combat. We obviously know that, and we do respect you, okay? We respect you the hell out of you. As a matter of fact, we actually feel bad for a lot of guys in that case because they can't say they saw action. I mean, your service is no less. That's not what the hell is going on. Like I said, most people we actually feel bad for. However, the thing about the veteran community is this right here. If you start lying about crap, that right there is where you lose our respect. Just saying that right there before we go any further. Chances are, if you've been keeping up with this story, you already know what happened. If you're new to this or you want some more information, let me just go ahead and kind of break it down for you. So, Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, now Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick. Basically what happened was he did 24 years in the National Guard. However, towards the end of his enlistment, he had already set himself up to go ahead and run for office. The thing was this right here, though. Months before, and this would also fall in line with the stop loss situation, which stop loss, of course, I'll do a better explanation of, probably on Gear Issue 33 when I get it ramped back up. I haven't done as much due to health issues. I'm primarily just focusing on one channel right now. Stop loss is basically a certain period that says, look, you're about to get out. Yeah, but if you fall within this time frame here, if we call you to service to go anywhere in the world for combat, you're going to go. I'm not going to get that specific into the policy now. I'll link some stuff in the description box for you guys. There was even a movie that was made on it through MTV Productions starring Ryan Phillippe and Channing Tatum. I'm not going to go too much into that movie because there's a lot of things that got wrong in that actual film. But don't worry, I'll probably do a video on that at a later date on one of the other various channels that I've created, especially the one for military movies and military film reviews. But the point is this right here. He was called into service and he refused to go. So somebody else had to take his place. By the way, he did this with time still on his contract. And of course, he chose not to go. And then there's also the controversy involving him claiming that he was a command sergeant major. Now, I'm going to tell you right now that more of that will be in the Angry Cops video, but let me go ahead and give you what I know. Basically, what Tim Walz did was he ran on the fact that he was a command sergeant major. However, the problem is this here. He wasn't a command sergeant major. Now, some people are probably going to say that he was billeted as a command sergeant major. Okay, I understand that, but he was an E8 at the time, meaning he was a master sergeant. Tim Pool would try to explain this in his segment, which we'll talk about here in a second as well. And of course, he actually failed in some regards, but he also got some right. The thing is this right here. You have to go to school for 2 years to be a command sergeant major. It's a specialized academy. Tim Walz didn't go, so therefore he's not a command sergeant major. Yet he's out there telling people he is a command sergeant major, when in reality, he was just a master sergeant in E8. Now, E8 in the U.S. Army, a lot like E8 in the United States Marine Corps, you can either A, be a master sergeant or first sergeant. The specifics of each one and each one's duties is a little bit complicated to explain, so I'm not going to really do that much. I'm going to defer you guys more to the Angry Cops video for that. But still, at the same time, though, he's lying about his rank. But let us continue.
I've seen a lot of statements from veterans, including those you served with, saying it's just untoward to be criticizing somebody who served for 24 years.
Dana, I'm not interested in the ad hominem. I've heard from a lot of veterans groups who criticize Tim Walz. The question is, he said he served in war, and he didn't. That is a dishonesty. I couldn't care less what one or the other person says about it. I care about what the truth is. The truth is that Tim Walz didn't tell the truth. And importantly, Dana, this is about Kamala Harris's judgment. And I think that when you ask, why has Kamala Harris allowed the border to be wide open? Why has Kamala Harris supported policies that have promoted the increase in inflation? I think it goes to the heart of her judgment, and I think that that's what we should be talking about.
One last.
People could see that these people have been, they've been protected. They've been coddled by the media. Not only have they been protected and coddled by the media, they've been protected and coddled by their own media from their own states, the states that they represent. Tim Walz, Minnesota, very, very Democrat state. California, very, very liberal Democrat state. The media is obviously not going to touch them. Now, the voter or the national media is a different matter altogether, or at least how the voter perceives what the national media is saying is a little bit different, but we've never actually seen this actually be voted on as a nation. I'm pretty sure the American people have something to say about this, but then you get the topic of Trump's non-military service.
Donald Trump didn't serve in the military. He received a medical draft deferment for bone spurs to avoid serving in the Vietnam War, reportedly as a favor to his father. Do you find that shameful, too?
I think that Donald Trump didn't serve in the military, but he didn't lie about it, Dana. I've known Donald Trump for a long time. He really honors our veterans. He honors me for my service. Donald Trump didn't lie about serving in the military. He didn't say that he went to Vietnam when he didn't. This is the problem. I don't criticize anybody. Whether they served our country or not, I think it's honorable to serve, but obviously a lot of people have reasons for not serving. I criticize somebody for embellishing their record, for lying, saying, I went to war. Dana, do you think that it's a problem that he said, I went to war, but he didn't actually? That
was an issue that came up in 2016. A lot of people were asking questions about why it was Trump never went to Vietnam. There was also a guy here on this platform that for whatever reason is no longer here. If you guys got any additional information on this person, please leave it in the comment section. But Stefan Molyneux did a series of videos on it was called The Untruth About Trump or The Truth About Trump, something like that. There, he made like 3 videos. And the topic of Trump's draft deferment was covered. Now, I went back and did some research because I myself, as a veteran, was concerned about this because a lot of people don't know this, but back in 2012, there was also a bit of a concern about Newt Gingrich. Apparently, he received a draft deferment too, and it was the issue that came up between him and Ron Paul. Ron Paul, of course, called him a chicken hawk. I wish I had that clip. I don't have it here, but still at the same time, though, Ron Paul, I think, got a draft card and did his time, where Newt Gingrich, I think, got a deferment, citing the fact he had a family. Trump, on the other hand, what happened in his case was that he actually showed up. They found out that he had bone spurs in his feet, and then he was sent back into the draft lottery. By the time it got to him, there was a draft deferment put in place, but also something else, too, to go on top of that was that, Nixon was already in the process of trying to eliminate the draft. So apparently this right here did not go anywhere. Trump never really lied about this, so therefore, technically, you don't really have anything to hit him with. But of course, people will still try to use that because they're delusional, never Trumpers, and of course, they want to keep using it for whatever gain they can get, when obviously the gain does not exist. Meanwhile, they're supporting somebody who's actually guilty of stolen valor, but of course, we're about to dive into that now. But I wanted to go ahead and throw that little bit in from that interview so that way you guys can kind of see where the media is going with this. Now, with that right there being said, let's get to this new information. The word is that this is actually just the tip of the iceberg with Tim Walz. It's actually about to get a lot worse. Now, look, we're not talking about policies. My God, the policies that he signed in Minnesota. Now, real quick, so that way you guys know that I'm not just some partisan hack, let me just go ahead and tell you what I don't like and then tell you some things I actually think were actually not a bad idea. Okay, now, this bill where he basically says that you can trans a child, that right there is obviously something I'm against. I'm not in favor of that. I've been going at this for the past 4 years on this platform. And I can obviously see this stuff coming out of this current crop of loons we have running the country. I'm obviously not a fan of this guy allowing the city of Minneapolis to completely burn to the ground. That right there also showed you his cowardice. I'm also not a fan of a lot of his policies. However, the one thing that they will run on is the fact that he got free lunches for kids. Okay, that right there I can see. But shouldn't that already be included in the budget? I mean, you're signing a law. You're signing that into law, yet that right there should have already been the law anyways. Look, let me say this really quick. These types of people, these types of Democrats, they will enter a situation, they will make a situation way worse, or they will completely screw up a situation, and then they'll put a Band-Aid on it and say they fixed it. That right there is what you're dealing with. That right there is what you call the Obama-era Democrat. That's who these people are. They're not really fixing anything. What they're doing is they're screwing things up, then going back, putting a Band-Aid on and saying they fixed it. And they know they can do this because they know there's a populace of people out there that are absolutely stupid and have very, very low IQs and can't think for themselves. Yes, I said that. If it costs me people, it costs me people. But quite frankly, at this point in time, I really segment I'm about to show you guys is pretty long. It's detailing a letter that was released by Tim Walz's battalion commander, where he actually not only talks about Tim Walz's lie, but he also talks about Tim Walz's leadership when he was in. And of course, it's actually a pretty epic letter. And of course, I'll link the full letter in the description box for you guys. I'm showing you guys a piece of it now in the B-roll footage, but this clip's going to run a little bit longer than normal. It's going to be about 1.5 minutes. It's from Timcast IR of Timcast, his live segment yesterday. But let me just go ahead and run this for you guys. So that way you guys can hear it uninterrupted.
He says, I do not regret that Tim Walz retired early from the Minnesota Army National Guard, did not complete the Sergeant's Major Academy, broke his enlistment contract, or did not successfully complete any assignment as a Sergeant Major. Unwittingly, he got out of the way for better leadership. Thomas Behrens was the right leader at the right time. He sacrificed to answer the call, leaving his family, business, and farming partner brother to train, lead, and care for soldiers. He earned the privilege of being called Command Sergeant Major. Like a great leader, he ran toward and not away from the guns. I have no opinion of Mr. Walz's service at the time that he did. It was his right to retire early. I also have no criticism of his service as an E7 and E8 in the MNA, Minnesota Army National Guard. By all accounts, and on the record, he was a competent chief of firing battery, gunnery sergeant, and first sergeant. I cannot say the same of his service sitting frocked in the CSM chair. He did not earn the rank or successfully complete any assignments as an E9. It is an affront to the non-commissioned officer corps that he continues to glom onto the title. I can sit in the cockpit of an airplane. It does not make me a pilot. Similarly, when the demands of service and leadership at the highest level got real, he chose another path. Let's just take the word from the people who actually served with him, and many. Some have called him a traitor. Now I'm going to defend him a little bit.
This right was basically a letter that was posted by his battalion commander, essentially roasting the absolute hell out of him for him basically not being that good at his job, and it actually being a good thing that he was replaced. But also at the same time, hitting back at him for the fact that he did not fulfill exactly what he was supposed to fulfill, meaning that he was called to service. He was called to go overseas with his unit, and he refused. Instead, he chose to do, how do I say, he chose a political campaign. Two types of people in the world that, quite frankly, just prove themselves to be scumbags more and more every day. Bought and paid for politicians, people who duck their duties to go run for office so that way they can screw other people. And then to go on top of that, you've got lifetime prosecutors like Judge Joe Brown said that only care about getting the guilty plea. Only care about getting the guilty verdict. Don't care about the truth, don't care about evidence, don't care about anything, don't actually care about the rule of law. These types of people are pure scumbags. That right there is essentially what this letter is detailing to you guys, is that, yeah, Tim Walz is a scumbag. Now, look, I could bring up all the clips from the Laura Ingraham show or all the bits from CNN where you've got people who actually serve with Tim Walz telling you that he's a scumbag and that he's guilty of stolen valor. But if I did that, obviously the video would be much, much larger. The point of the matter is this right here. This right here is designed to show you exactly how bad this guy's stolen valor is, and it's going to show you exactly how much of a scumbag he is, how much of a liar he is. That right there is the reason why it is I'm making this video. But obviously we got more to discuss, and it's not just the letter that was put out by his battalion commander. There's also the clips as well, which we will get to right now.
So I'm going to play this just real quick one more time. Listen to what he's saying. And I'm starting light with y'all because we can get heavier.
One of those that came back, we were in support of OEF, but setting in there with OEF.
He's talking about the mental health suffered by people who served in Operation Enduring Freedom and Iraqi Freedom. Now, he did in Europe, not in war. But when you say that I'm one of those who came back as a first sergeant, I saw, and these people weren't trained, and you're literally in the context of providing proper mental health for those who suffered under combat circumstances, we know the inference you're trying to draw. You were there. You saw what happened. You came back. And then, listen.
OIF veterans, when we came back, they showed us the horse whisperer and told us to be nice.
They told us to be nice. They told you to be nice? Bro, look, with all due respect, he did serve in Operation Enduring Freedom in Europe, providing base security in Europe. I do respect it. But you really got
to there about the what he was saying about the horse whisperer and being nice. I think needs to be addressed at a later date in a later video. Talk about exactly how it was guys were treated when they got home. But the problem is this right here. Tim Walz was not one of those guys who got back home from deployment. He's not one of those guys who saw combat. He was deployed to Italy while Iraq was going on, while Afghanistan was going on. And, it's a nice base, Aviano, from what I understand, but still, though, he never saw combat. Once again, a blatant misrepresentation of who you are, but then you get the other clips of him saying he's a retired command sergeant major, when obviously he was just an E8, which is not a command sergeant major, let alone a sergeant major, and he did not even go to the 2-year course. Speaking of one of those clips, let's go ahead and look at this one.
But don't worry. If this was the standalone context by which people had accused him, I'd be saying, well, come on. Oh, but it gets much worse than that. So we've already got, here we go. Let's play this. This is him lying about being a retired command sergeant major.
And I'm running for Congress here in southern Minnesota for several important reasons. But today I'd like to tell you about one issue that's very personal to me. I am a retired command sergeant major in the...
No, he's not. That was not true. So what we're really looking at is combining all of these things. You have the Harris campaign admitting he misspoke every single time. Well, that's an admission of lying. Because when they acknowledge that what he's saying is not true, when they edit their website to remove his rank because it's not his rank, I can understand why there are a lot of veterans who are upset, criticizing him, calling it stolen valor. He was not a retired command sergeant major. When you combine this with everything said, that's when you're like, okay, this dude's intention, okay? His intent...
I didn't say this earlier, but the Kamala Harris campaign, they're saying that he misspoke. No, he didn't misspoke. He flat out lied. This was a point that was made in that interview with JD Vance and Dana Bash, where they claimed that he came out, that the Harris campaign came out, clarified and corrected the record, and they clarified it by doubling down on the lie. That right there is actually what they did. Look, you got people out there like Montel Williams, people out there on CNN right now trying to do everything they can to suddenly say that they respect military veteran service and stuff like that, but they really, truly never gave a crap about it. It's only there when it's politically convenient. You could argue that the right is doing the exact same thing here. However, the problem is this right here. The guy that we're talking about did, in fact, actually lie about his military record, and that's obviously a problem. Lied about his rank and continues to lie about it to this day. And he's been busted wide open, which of course has got people wondering if Tim Walz is ever going to be replaced. However, before we talk about that and talk about something else I mentioned earlier, there's one more bit, and it's this letter that Tim Walz himself put out about, being in Afghanistan, being at Bagram Air Base. Let's watch this.
Now, some have said, no, they were prepared for him. Prepared for him? By who? Did he not sign off on this speech? I am not here to make assumptions about what, why, or who. They say it was prepared for him. Don't know, don't care. Tim Walz gave a speech. There is a speech that I would assume he wrote, right? All I can tell you this is, believe whatever you want to believe. They're his words. They are the words attributed to Tim Walz.
To make it look more official, Tim, that right there is the reason why they did it. But basically what they did was they admitted to an official lie. But let's continue.
This is a statement they've attributed to Tim Walz, which is almost his exact speech minus some small changes. Almost his exact speech on that website. The question is, why was this prepared? Who was prepared? Who prepared it? Why did they publish it on the government website attributed to Tim Walz, even though it matches almost identically what his speech was? It says, quote, in the years after that classroom, I had the privilege of serving in this state's National Guard. I stood one night in the dark of night on the tarmac at Bagram Air Base in Iraq and watched a military ramp ceremony, a soldier's body being loaded onto a plane to be returned home. And if you've seen it, you don't leave the same. It makes you wonder, what are we doing? What are we trying to get to? And when watching as all... Now, some have said, no, they were prepared for him. Prepared for him? By who? Did he not sign off on this speech? I am not here to make assumptions about what, why, or who. They say it was prepared for him. Don't know, don't care. Tim Walz gave a speech. There is a speech that I would assume he wrote, right? All I can tell you this is, believe whatever you want to believe. They're his words. They are the words attributed to Tim Walz.
I'll let that run a little bit longer, and let me just go ahead and say this. The reason why it is that Tim Walz is lying is because Tim Walz feels he can get away with it. They know that the media will take care of them. They know that the left-wing media will cover them in a positive light. They know this is the case, and the same thing with Kamala Harris. It's part of the reason why it is Bakari Sellers is upset at this moment in time that the media is considering going negative on Kamala Harris. However, that right there would also be hyperbolic. They're not considering going negative on Kamala Harris. What they're simply doing is just reporting the truth about her and her past. And, of course, they're considering doing the full bit on Joe Biden's administration. That right there would make you think that the mainstream media is turning on them when that's not actually the case. The mainstream media every now and again has to be truthful and do a good job so that way they can look somewhat legitimate and somewhat honorable to their own audience. You guys see what I'm saying? This is one of the biggest reasons why it is Kamala Harris has got to go and actually do some actual interviews and be held accountable. Of course, she's not going to do this is because she's running what it is. It's strictly an online campaign. Online campaigns don't work. You have to actually physically talk to voters. You have to actually do sit-down interviews and talk to people on the taped interviews that are going to be on television or live interviews because people, for the most part, still watch TV for their news and commentary. Yes, they do get a lot of their news from social media, but that article that states that people primarily get their news from social media is neglecting the fact that people get their news multiple times a day in multiple different devices, multiple different settings. You get your news through social media while you're at work. You check your phone. You go to Facebook. You see an article. Maybe you click on it. Maybe you read it. Or a lot of people do nowadays. They read the headline. That's it. And then they go home and they get the actual commentary from the news media because the news media will actually break it down for them. That right there is how news works today. And you're going to have to, at some point in time, do some want to actually talk to people outside their own purview. Meaning they don't want to talk to people outside their own states, or they're not interested in actually doing so. They want to stay within their bubble. It's one of the issues, and even Tim himself has covered this. So he says stuff like eat the bugs, live in the pod. That's what he's talking about. He's talking about people who, quite frankly, have been in the bubble their entire life. They've not actually spoken to people outside the bubble. These are people who view people who are living in rural areas, small town, as subservient. I mean, there was even a clip that I've played on multiple occasions I don't have now of Tim Walz even telling people Democrats need to stop stressing out over people who live in areas with cows and rocks. This is who these people are. They don't care about anything outside the city. But at the end of the day, though, when you only care about things inside the cities and run to the cities, after a while, you lose your rural voting base, you lose your support, and that's a recipe for disaster. That way, there's a different topic for another day, rural versus urban. But the fact of the matter is this here. This is who these people really and truly are, and they've been allowed to get away with crap like, say, what we're finding out on Tim Walz right now. They've been getting away with it because their own medias in their own states, their own outlets don't cover it. But now it's on the national stage, and things are probably going to change. We'll see if the national stage holds these people accountable. But you guys tell me what you think in the comment section. With that there out of the way, make sure you guys please hit the like button, subscribe, share the video, sign off in the comment section. There's going to be a video not related to politics out tomorrow, and I'm probably going to give you guys some updates in that video. Something that you probably thought to yourself, oh my God, he's recovering a topic that he was covering for a while. That will be out tomorrow, but make sure you guys stick around for that one too. But still, though, there's a lot in there. But still, like button, subscribe, share the video, sound off in the comments, and I'll see you guys later.